The moment you decide you don't want to work a 9 to 5, you just signed up to work 24/7. The entrepreneurial journey is one that never rests, because there's always something to be done. And especially if you're in the role of being the creator and being that person to drive the progress, there's always something to be done, even if there's nothing, even if there's nothing tangibly there, to maintain. There's always something to create to eventually maintain.
Let's discover the Cleveland entrepreneurial ecosystem. We are telling the stories of its entrepreneurs and those supporting them. Welcome to the Lay of the Land podcast, where we are exploring what people are building in Cleveland. I am your host, Jeffrey Stern, and today I had the real pleasure of speaking with a friend and with someone who I admire deeply as a true champion of Cleveland, David Davis. David is a native Clevelander where he currently resides. After high school, David directly immersed himself into the tech startup world. He's been an entrepreneur his entire life. Since the age of 13, he's been involved in various direct-to-consumer e-commerce projects, generating over 7 figures before he turned 21. Gathering years of experience in online retail, David recently founded FBA Flip, a marketplace to service the emerging world of e-commerce M&A transactions in the Amazon ecosystem. David is an orator with an endless mental well of intellectual and well thought out ideas. It's always a real pleasure getting to hear his perspective on entrepreneurship, the changing dynamics of the modern internet-first world we find ourselves in, and the challenges, the opportunities, and the prospects for the city of Cleveland. Please enjoy my conversation with David Davis. So this conversation, I feel like, has been somewhat years in the making. I feel like, and I'm glad we finally get to have it.
I know. I'm glad to be here.
So having kind of talked in depth with you about your own work and perspective on Cleveland and entrepreneurship more generally, I've been very much looking forward to sharing your perspective with a broader audience tuning in, and we'll get to really the breadth of work that you're doing. But I want to start with your history. I know you've had a rooted interest in entrepreneurship from a young age, and I'd love if you could take us through your background, because it's such a fascinating story.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I really got into e-commerce and selling online when I was probably about 13 or 14. It really wasn't kind of in an enterprise level at this point. It was more just kind of just independently, just run, just kind of just really almost looking at this as a job for myself. Just kind of just when I was in school, just kind of just learning a couple, just skills about, pay-per-click marketing, just, different stuff, SEO, just website design, different digital skills. As I went on, I started to create my own websites. As I just started to sell things online, I just started to realize, at this time, and keep in mind, this is probably my freshman year, sophomore year of high school at this time. So this, and you'll see, as the story goes on and stuff, just, being in school and how, just this professional development, progressed, and presented a conflict eventually. But pretty much, I was so interested, just in like the emerging world of just the fact that these things could even be done online. And this is, like I said, this is 2014, 2015, and I'm 14 or 15 at this time. So nothing is serious, so I'm just playing around online, kind of selling stuff on Shopify and stuff, but having success in doing so, and that being said, I just continue to progress and start to realize if I'm having this type of success in school and doing this kind of in a part-time way, I wonder what could ever happen if I really got serious about it, and I felt as though, at that time I had enough proof of concept to even, feel justified to take a leap, more in like the entrepreneurial direction, just because I felt as though just whatever I had been done, like just on a rudimentary level, had it gone well to a degree, I just almost needed to prove it to myself. Could this go further? So then I continued really. When I was about, I want to say maybe 15 or 16, I probably took my next step. Like I said, I used to sell shoes online and stuff. I used to kind of just do consignment and stuff, sell my own shoes and stuff like that. And really, I just say, just really into like the sneaker resale game. And I got to when I was 16, 17 years old, I started to realize it had gone well for, I'm going to say the first couple of years. I started to realize like, where's the growth opportunity in this? How can I take the next step? Like I said, at this time, I'm just reselling sneakers and stuff. I'm in 10th grade at this point. So I'm just thinking to myself, like, I still, for one thing, not even having the interest of, an enterprise. Granted, the fact I'm 15 at this point, I'm just trying to see how much more money can be made and how much more of an opportunity or how much of a market is this even really accessible to be, just done online? So that being said, I started to, wholesale pallets, just different, athletic goods, particularly sneakers and stuff, creating myself a Shopify site. And like I said, really started to do a lot of social media marketing just around, just the different products. Granted, these are already, branded products, licensed products. So a lot of when you're reselling things, you don't really have to, create the brand equity, that is, if it was something, that you create, you don't have to make Nike popular. You don't have to make Jordans popular. They're already popular. It's just, more or less your access, to the supply because the demand is already present. So that being said, I just wanted to continue seeing, how much further I, really progress with this. I got to a point, when I remember in 10th grade, I had like a 2-week stretch when I was selling shoes. Maybe not even 2 weeks, it was probably 12 days. And I remember because this is like probably my turning point into thinking, maybe I should just pursue this seriously. I had done like 34,000 in sales in like 12 days. I'm saying this is like 2 weeks in high school. And I remember this one day I was just sitting, I was sitting in math class. I just thought to myself, I shouldn't be here anymore. and I just thought, at this point, I've just done this as, just with such divided attention. I wonder, if I ever could really, pursue this in a full-time track, what could manifest that? And that was probably my turning point where I said, I'm really not so much interested in going to school. I'm more or less interested in starting to teach myself, these digital skill sets because I felt as though, those skills could manifest into, more of a career path than what I might even be expecting, So at that point, that caused a lot of friction being in 10th grade.
I can imagine.
When you're in 10th grade and think there's an alternative solution to school, it raises a lot of eyebrows. So, and just, even kind of speak to that point more, I think it's really an admission of just, where we were at in society and where we've even transitioned to, even up to this point, because see, going to school in the 80s, going to school in the 90s is obviously a prerequisite, to do things in those traditional ways. But I want to say, just through the emergence of a lot of these, digital and tech tracks, I will say, the opportunities have really changed the landscape, of what really can be done, and I would say I wouldn't say, I'm in the first wave, just the tech wave, but I will say, I do feel just people, in their 20s or 30s, I think they're really living through the inceptive phase of a lot of new cool stuff. Like when you think of Web3 and stuff, I tell people, you don't even understand. You think this is out, it's not out. Just there's so many things that are just like a inceptive phase right now. This tech stuff and it's already making a lot of money. You just think, what is the evolution of this space going to bring? And I just thought to myself, I would feel really bad if I got left out. And I just at that point, I just said, I just have to explore this a little more. So. That's just kind of what I did.
Wow. I mean, all right, a lot of threads I want to pull on here before we make our way chronologically forward. But one of those is, I guess we'll take two detours here. One is that question of what happens when you take something seriously. So it is a question, you were pondering, it sounds like, for a few years.
Yeah.
And that there was a catalyst in just the sheer quantity that you were working through at that one time. Yeah. How do you navigate starting to take it seriously?
Yeah. Beginning to take it serious is, I wouldn't say the hardest. It's the first domino to fall and more hard dominoes. People don't understand the moment you decide you don't want to work a 9 to 5, you just signed up to work 24/7. The entrepreneurial journey is one that never rests, because there's always something to be done. And especially if you're in the role of being the creator and being that person to drive the progress, there's always something to be done. Even if there's nothing, even if there's nothing tangibly there, to maintain, there's always something to create to eventually maintain, So I think really, really understanding, what it is or lack of understanding of what I was getting myself into at the time probably caused, a lot of just a lot of the hesitancy and really, want to take this, full circle. The primary reason is being 16 at the time, just being in 10th grade and not really, even having the full autonomy to make my own decisions and stuff, it really, created the last 2 years of my high school experience were some of the most lively times in this entire journey. And people who know me well know the reality of it is once I got serious about wanting to, be an entrepreneur, and I will say, being an entrepreneur is something that you tangibly have to know and not assume. Because see, I will say there was a period of time when I got out of high school, from when like the first 18 months, year and a half when I got out of high school, that I wanted to leave the door open, to like want to go into college potentially or something. See, people, everyone has a dream, everyone has an idea and stuff, but there's the hard work lies in the execution, because everybody has an idea. And I had, and I had to get to a point myself, just not to fool myself. I had to almost, tell myself, put it on the table that it's not for you. It may not be for you. That way you can at least accept and move on, if this is not for you, because an entrepreneurial journey is not for everybody. I almost feel a lot of people are called to it, then go to it. I just, what happened to me, kind of in my formative years, making that type of money, making 10, 20, $30,000 at 14, 15 years old, almost, it sets your mind into a different way.
Yeah.
To make you think maybe there is an opportunity, that can be, that can be actualized. And I just thought, if you didn't have, if you don't have those type of experiences, that really validate to you that there is some type of concept to pursue, I was very concerned, to actually pursue it until in reality I had made some money, because, when everything's an idea until something's tangible, and to not go to school and, and really, take that leap of, kind of just doing things on your own. I think that is probably the hardest leap to do, because I would say one thing that really helped me is the earliness of my decision. It allowed me to start creating the structure that when it was time to graduate, when it was time to get out of school, I wasn't just starting to build that structure. So by the time high school was over, I almost had a different structure to kind of transition my, into my adult life. I wasn't, getting out of high school, trying to start a business and stuff. I had really been doing that in high school. So by the time we got out, it was a little bit of a smoother transition. I think, what it would be if I just were to start, doing some of the things once I got out of school.
And as you were acquiring this digital skill set, is it truly, trial by fire? You're a student of the internet. Did you have mentorship? How did you go about actually figuring out how to navigate this world?
Yeah. When stuff is so new and so malleable and so inceptive, people don't understand every master was once a student. These people, who really mastered these things, they started from nothing, because there's no barometer in these spaces. There's no barometer in e-commerce. There's no barometer in Web3 for success right now, So the people who are really, creating these things are doing just that. They are creating it. They really are those people with those visions and the strategies to really carry these things out, And I thought to myself, it was probably the most advantageous thing for me to start doing this in school, in a learning track, because this was my learning, So like I said, during that time, I was very fortunate to be able to, take a lot of, probably professional L's, while I was in school, because I would say by the time I really, got out, into the professional scene, a lot of things probably didn't come to light because they had been fixed so early on, just in my development. I didn't have, mentors and stuff, just because, like I said, some of these things are so progressive and so new and so far-fetched. There's not a lot of traditional acumen, to really be able to guide you through these things. When I was about 19 years old, I would say like my first year out of school, like I said, a few months after school, I want to say maybe like September or October, after, I first got out of high school, I really started getting serious about, working with this dude in Jersey. This dude, Steve, just really, and Steve, you're listening. Shout out to you, man, because one thing that really happened is stuff. When I got out of high school, I was fortunate to have been dealing with somebody who really came into my picture and really, helped me to structure a lot of things, just kind of in this e-commerce world, and I did think, there's a lot of information, but things are kind of, like piecing together a puzzle with a lot of these things. I don't think any one person truthfully has all the answers, but if you're fortunate enough and you're blessed enough to be in the right realms and acquire enough information, I feel as though you can use, those puzzle pieces, to create your own puzzle. And I was definitely, very fortunate to be able to find somebody and, it can really engage with somebody who had, a lot of experience, just in the e-commerce realm and stuff, and was able to help me take, kind of just like my intermediary or, my introductory rather skills at that time, and really, give me some opportunities to start, actualizing them and applying them to, just a real venture. And like I said, out of that, I was able to, one, get some real proof of concept, showing, what I can do, that, being able to finally get paid, just like being that age and stuff. when you're also starting, it's so young and stuff like, and I've just realized kind of the blessing of that is you don't have a lot of money that needs to, you don't have anything you need to do at 19 years old. You don't have bills, you don't have a kid and stuff, so it definitely allows progress to expedite, when you think to yourself, like how many people, in their 30s or 40s are interested in doing stuff, but it's like, bills have to be paid, there's children, there's other hurdles and stuff, as you just get into this entrepreneurial journey that, you realize, there's a point where real life meets, all of this stuff, you realize, I can't sacrifice too much of my real life, for this journey. And, I think I was grateful, to get that before then.
Yeah, no, really, really fascinating. I mean, I think the crux of what education is supposed to give you is like how to learn in the first place. And it sounds like you just kind of had that innate within you already.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I definitely, like I said, I got to a point once I started really, just like I said, I tell people a lot of times, just, like generationally and stuff, the benefits or the things and the tools rather that our generation has, and something I don't think we execute on enough. Our generation has definitely the most access to information of any generation before. Just having the internet accessible to you, you have to understand, like, there's a lot of old disparities that oftentimes stagnate new progress. Like when you hear how things used to be in the past and stuff, and you try to apply them to how things are today, you oftentimes can fool yourself out of, the blessing and the situation that is today. And I say that to say, when people are able to access that information, if you already have, if you're already intellectually curious, there's no way that you can be held back at this point in society if you already have that drive, because the information is just so available to you, And I thought, what, just having the internet, just having, like I said, I think that was probably another unique thing, from a lot of other, startup entrepreneurial stories in our generation to a lot of prior ones. We had people who just casually have laptops. In the 90s, this was not, that having a computer is not, the household thing, in the past. So I've had to almost, kind of step back from the trees and kind of see the whole forest and realize, a lot of the blessing that, just having the access to information so early on has really been able to speed things up a lot.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the internet in a lot of ways is kind of the great equalizer, right? Like the wisdom is abundant, the counsel is free.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. And it's just all the knowledge is there.
Yep. Yes, I love that. The counsel is free. And that's what I'm saying. And I tell people all the time, what, you can't make the excuses, of your dad's America now, because the reality of this, whatever, like, people talk about, especially like being, a Black founder and stuff. We talk about, systemic disparities and stuff, and oftentimes a lot of things, just that exist in our society, and not to downplay the significance of how, how the ways of old have affected the times of new. But just like you said, the internet is the ultimate equalizer. I think, for anyone who feels as though, that they've been disparaged, or anyone who feels as though, like I said, opportunities are not as abundant as they could be, I think there is an equalizer. And just with the introduction of, technology into society at this level, I think it mitigates a lot of excuses, that people can make, So I definitely have thought about that a lot.
All right. So we're getting pretty meta here. I want to maybe just, take us to the next step in the chronological journey, right? So you're starting to take it seriously. What happens?
Yeah. So when I started taking it seriously, it really became rough. Like I said, so being 16 at this time, and my mom and dad wanted me, to continue, like I said, just in school, just like in that track. It really just unnerved my foundation, and just, just how my life had been up to this point. Like I said, 16 years old, I go to US, I'm in private school and stuff. Just the environment of what that expectation was and what I was doing, it contradicted itself to a high degree at that point, and especially, like with the expectation, like that type of traditional success, again, and that track already kind of in place. I think it not so much confused, but almost upset a lot of people around me, because I felt as though, a lot of people felt I had, a very nice track set before me. If I were just, just continue with this, there should be no problem, but like I said, and this is what I talk about generationally, it's very hard to compare what old success looks like to new success, and I was saying, that just speaking to that point, the internet has really changed, like what this even looks like. I tell my dad a lot, just like when you think about, an old billionaire versus a new billionaire, you look, like an old real estate developer, billionaire, some, just in a traditional, a traditional wealth accrual track, something like that versus when you think of Elon or you think of Bezos, just how much richer they are, than, like a traditional, billionaire. Just the scale of what new wealth looks like, it's just totally different, just because the medium in which it's created, which is the internet, So that being said, I just almost could not take the opportunity to at least see it, just because I just already felt as though what I've experienced on a low level, just selling shoes, was really just mind numbing to me, and I thought to myself, like, it almost mitigated a lot of things. And I believe it's kind of just us being in Cleveland and stuff, kind of just speaking to a lot of things, even geographically, we might go through. I almost thought to myself that this is an opportunity that really mitigates a lot of these things, lack of job opportunity, and things, like maybe, the lack of industry diversification, like what if there's an opportunity I want to be able to pursue, but it might not be in Cleveland, with being able to do these things online and having these skills, play in those arenas that you please to. I realized, that's probably the most conducive track to success, in these days. And I think that was such a turbulent time because there was so much ambiguity. Just the internet, like I said, just the internet every year is taking a new step in this evolution, and just how this new economy is creating itself. You look at Web3 and e-commerce and really the formalization of e-commerce and these new, digital verticals into just this is how things are done in society, like e-commerce being the new retail, just stuff like that. And I think when you're in those transition periods, it's very difficult, to kind of sell someone on where you're transitioning to versus where you're transitioning from, And I think I feel like I'm a poster child for having went through that. I ended up, like I said, as school went on and stuff, I was so entrepreneurially motivated. By the time I was in senior year, I actually ended up getting in trouble and left school early. Second semester senior year at US, I just really was not involved in school because it just didn't. I didn't see school elevating me to my next step post high school at that point, And then I had also seen a couple of things. Like I said, those last 2 years of high school were very, those were definitely, my most formative years because the things that happened, they definitely, I just set the expectation of how, I expected or how, I really, just like kind of moved myself, just kind of through my adult life up to this point. Another thing ended up happening. We had another classmate when I want to say maybe he ended up leaving US, I want to say our sophomore year. Okay. So like I said, when I was 15, we had a classmate and he was, kind of like I said, into artificial intelligence, stuff like this, stuff like a lot of concepts that are, prominent and become, very prominent now. But in 2014, and it's crazy to think, that this is 7-8 years ago, but it was totally different, even 7-8 years ago, to just how it's looked at now, But long story short, people really were looking at this guy like, I don't know what he's doing. I could tell he was somebody else in school who really, like had something else going on. And because I could tell that in myself, I could tell like who else was maybe pondering, like even if this may be for them, as well, just because I knew I was doing that myself. But I knew he was doing something with artificial intelligence, and I knew it just kind of something like the wealth management world and stuff. I didn't get too involved in it and whatnot. But as time went on, like I said, he leaves school, 10th grade, 11th grade. I want to say maybe mid 11th grade, first semester, senior year. He's in TechCrunch, okay, and they just raised like $14 million in a Series A from Sequoia Venture in Silicon Valley, okay. And to have gone to school with somebody like that and to start seeing, like, okay, the manifestation of this is a classmate, like to have raised, like at $100 million valuation. And like I said, I'm still in school at this point. He's 17. We're all 17. And this is talking about the mind numb of what I felt like I might need to pursue. When these type of things are happening around you, it just almost makes you feel as though like the validation is there. I know this can be done. It's just more or less my ability to do it. It's not, like the space or the validity of can it be done, is can you do it, And I just felt at that point like I had to just roll my dice and I had to, just go and wholeheartedly see if this is a viable track for me. Another thing that, kind of ended up happening just out of like those final years in high school was me not doing so well in school like I had done all my life before. It really just showed me the devotion of your time. It's just how you're talking about, just when you get serious about something 100%, the outcome of that is going to look totally different than 50% serious. And I saw the outcome of 50% serious by devoting myself halfway to business, halfway through school, and nothing was really working out, at the level that I wanted it to. And I thought to myself, if I continue to pursue the entrepreneurial track, 50% of my time devoted to that was already working out to something. I just really was curious to see that what would 100% work out to this, and me taking that step. It definitely was really, really hard for the people around me to begin with. But like I said, I want to say as that proof of concept really started to, actualize itself, those things, they went out the window.
So tell us about Fulfillment by Amazon, right? And the beginnings of an enterprise that you're pulling together outside of, maybe just your own pursuits.
So FBA Flip, pretty much, like I said, now just kind of understand a little bit about my background, just like the whole world, behind e-commerce. Selling online, like I said, selling online, really growing up in that world, I had never thought of, the e-commerce world I never thought of it as too overly formal. I never looked at, this isn't wealth management, this isn't financial advisory. This is e-commerce. This is selling stuff online. This is wholesale, branded goods, and stuff like that. Pay-per-click optimization. I want to say maybe somewhere around 2019, 2020, what ends up happening, and another thing just was said, what COVID really did for everything online, was really institutionalized and formalized things being done online. When you think of remote learning, like telehealth and stuff, after COVID, this is now the way things are done, and before then, if it were a concept or if it were a trend or if it were a niche, it's now more the norm, so pretty much what ends up happening is around 2019, this thing called aggregators really started to become a concept. I started to realize, like, what are aggregators? People are telling me, you can sell your store now. You can do this. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what do you mean sell my store? Sell my Amazon store? What, sell my income? Sell what pays the bills? And I just started to, really become curious as, just the concept, this whole M&A world around e-commerce assets. As I really started, kind of just like dive into it, just do my own research, I just started to realize, pretty much what an aggregator is a private equity firm with a strategic emphasis on acquiring Amazon native brands. So when people are starting brands on Amazon, pretty much those people who are growing those brands, they're private equity firms who are pretty much seeking to become CPG companies of the future. So pretty much they think to themselves, if I go ahead and aggregate, 10 to 15 of these smaller brands all in the same category, I will eventually end up dominating this category online, and I start to realize what the mantra is of aggregators and what their acquisition criteria even is. Just being an Amazon seller, I started to realize, you can sell your store for 2 to 4 times, annual net. I'm starting to think this is not so much like a store. This is more like an asset. And this is starting to become much more traditional, much more formalized than, what I had initially thought it was. So that being said, I started to kick the tires on selling my store, like I'm just starting to think, if you make $100,000 in a year, and just being able all of a sudden, to sell it off to a private equity firm, that's going to pay you, $250,000 to $400,000 for it. I wanted to start exploring those options. As in doing so, I started to realize there's not a real formalized way, to really sell your business. There's over 70 buyers, that do this. There's a lot of firms that are starting to acquire, direct to consumer Amazon brands. And I just started thinking to myself, how do I know, that this guy is going to offer me $1 million and this guy won't offer me $2 million? Like, there's just no formal process behind this. And then when you use a brokers, of course, they claim to operate, in the best interest of their client. But, when you're receiving, a sell side fee, the reality of it is, you want to get paid too, So the broker avenue, it's just what it is. And I just started to realize there's not a good way, for this to really formalize itself and to scale. So pretty much what we did is we started to say, okay, how can we almost create a marketplace that connects Amazon sellers with all of these professional buyers and almost create a bidding system where it's like, okay, when I have my store and I want to go sell it, I want to know that every buyer has pretty much seen my deal. And that way I can almost make sure I'm going to get the max payout for my business. So pretty much, what we've started to create was we look at it like the Zillow or the realtor.com of Amazon businesses. When you want to sell, when you want to exit your Amazon business, pretty much what FBA Flip is this. We're a marketplace for Amazon FBA mergers and acquisitions. We're a buy-side platform where pretty much all the sellers that list on our platform, pay nothing to use the platform. Every buyer that's signed up, through FBA Flip pretty much pays us a success fee or a commission, for every successful transaction close. There's no cost to use FBA Flip until, actually a deal was done. But pretty much what our work is really working on the sell side. Even though we're a buy side platform, the value in any transaction, like just with digital assets, is that digital asset itself. If the seller is bringing, their store to sell, there's 100 buyers. There's only one store, so really making sure that seller feels valuable and making sure they know what they need to and making sure, that their exit plan, it's sufficient, to walk away from their business. Making sure that that component of the transaction feels valuable. That is pretty much, just the mission behind FBA Flip is really making sure that FBA seller feels like we can help them through this exit process and ensure that they get the max payout for their business. So kind of dove into that. I want to say this is really, we just went live and stuff on the 26th of June. This has really been all year in the making, just kind of just like the private equity network, just really making sure we have the professional buyers lined up, that when we are getting deals, that we can quickly, kind of shout these out to our network, turn these around, get offers, kind of in our bidding system. And like I said, really please sellers, by showing them that we expeditiously, are bringing value to you guys, making sure, you're getting the looks, for your asset and, they're at the value that you see, your business selling for.
Such a fascinating idea. How did you go about, you mentioned maybe there's 70 or big players in the space.
Yep.
How do you go about approaching those folks, getting them interested in the platform, getting their buy-in?
Yep. Just how you and I have been just speaking about how like a lot of these things just in the tech economy are so inceptive. People don't realize, oftentimes these startup companies are your opportunity to pretty much probably catch a wave, before, it really is a wave, and that being said, when you think, these aggregators and all these private equity firms that are buying these Amazon businesses, when you think of the largest buyer in a $15 billion space, only been in inception since late 2019, you think this is relatively a new space, So that being said, really, some things are right place, right time. And so much of, like just the establishment of, FBA transactions are trying to figure out how can all these buyers streamline the M&A process and the due diligence process, the sourcing of deal flow and whatnot. So like I said, everyone's trying to, be the private equity firm. We start to realize there's nobody who's, really formalizing, this kind of this mid sector and, and really, organizing these things to even be sent off these private equity firms, to be looked and sought for acquisition. We just start to realize there's a huge gap in this market, a market, that really, I want to say everyone who's in the market probably started off in the same way as us, just as native Amazon sellers. You just start to think to yourself, if you were in that position, would you want to sell your business? And oftentimes the answer is no, because there's not enough, formalized processes in place, to really make sure that you as the seller are going to walk away with, what you think your business is worth. There wasn't even a formalized way to appraise an Amazon business before we came into the space. We started offering real-time data-driven, valuation when most traditional brokers were pretty much just multiplying whatever, you make in a year times 3. And that's just what it is, And like I said, the evolution of these things, they're so early on. It gives you an opportunity, like I said, if you're a creator, if you're someone, with that vision, with that strategy, really, put your stamp on the space.
So it's pretty, unsaturated. It's not like there's a huge competitive force at play for the kind of work that you're trying to do, or how does it look right now?
Yeah. So to speak on that, and I say this a lot, I call it a default monopoly. Oftentimes when spaces are so underdeveloped, there's oftentimes a default monopoly where someone really has a monopoly on the space by default, just because there is no competition, So that being said, for the last 10 years, okay, just of even, just M&A transaction with e-commerce stores in general, mostly have been with sell-side brokers. Us being a buy-side platform totally resets the dynamic of just what the marketplace looks like, because if we're all vying for sellers, you have to understand whoever brings the most value to the seller is going to, win that seller. They're going to win that deal. So the reality for us, when we look at it through those lenses, we start to say, yeah, there's sell-side brokers. There's a couple of big platforms and stuff that are all charging the sellers because these sellers don't have an alternative. There is, like these people have default monopolies on this space up to this point. And I would say up until 2019, it really wasn't as easy on the buy side of this, even to exit to the right, strategic buyer, because aggregators are really, kind of a new concept, like the private equity firms that are exclusively there to buy and acquire Amazon businesses and to scale those things out. Now, just with all those firms really, kind of in the fold, just in the space that are exclusively looking, to make those type of acquisitions, we just saw, this is an opportunity that we, kind of take all, the obvious buyers and then, kind of trek down into, more, the private family offices, and, independent e-commerce operators who are also interested, to acquire and scale Amazon stores. But we just started to realize this being unique, and really, one being first, but outside of that, being unique and bringing the most value to who's valuable is really, what separates us.
And when you think about who is valuable, right, the other side of the equation,
right,
how is it that you're going about bringing in the supply side?
Right. When we're pursuing sellers, and like I said, this is really the frenzy, kind of in this whole Amazon M&A space, is when you have 75 buyers that are all, trying to acquire businesses. It's like they almost all have 75 individual outreach strategies, to find these sellers. And the reality of it is, it almost creates it creates a very advantageous situation for us, because for us, we look at it like there's so many buyers aggressively pursuing, these sellers, that we're the only people saying, how about we just go to dinner and discuss exit planning? We are going to, because we have all the buyers signed up anyways. The way we pursue these sellers, we're in competition to be the intermediary almost directly with the buyers, because the reality of it is the buyers cutting us out. Yes, it reduces, like the, your total acquisition cost. But the reality of it is you need the seller, because, the seller has that asset. And if the seller feels most comfortable working with FBA Flip, then you'll be working with FBA Flip commensurately as well. So we realize that the value in an FBA transaction is making sure that seller feels, okay, I have a team around me. I have an M&A advisor. I have a legal advisor. I have an accountant with me. Pretty much going to, handle my financial due diligence on this side. They're going to discuss, these APAs, these LOIs, with these firms. And now I feel much more comfortable in having these conversations, and when we present ourselves to sellers, like we build a team around you, and it's really, kind of results in us, being pretty successful, even with us being a relatively new marketplace.
No, yeah, it's such a cool model, because I think in a lot of ways it borrows a lot from some of the old kind of mechanisms, but it's just in a completely new way. It's very cool.
Man, I tell people all the time, a startup is purposeful restructuring. There's nothing new under the sun. So I call it purposeful restructuring. If you can bring purpose to something, you're really just restructuring a lot of things and stuff. Like when you think about Airbnbs and you think of the hotel industry, all Airbnb is an agglomerated platform, pretty much to offer a hotel service in a I was about to say decentralized, but like an independent way, not decentralized.
Yeah.
But it pretty much it takes out like an intermediary, and that's why I said when you think of Uber and the taxi industry and stuff, there's a lot of relationship, to how things used to be done and the modernized way of doing it, because all Airbnbs are and all Ubers are 21st century hotels and 21st century taxis, So when you look at it through the lenses of purposeful restructuring, you say to yourself, I don't have to totally, construct something. I have to take the best factions from pre-existing things and make a better mousetrap.
So having kind of put this together, looking forward a bit, what is the vision that you have for the future? What is the impact in retrospect you're looking to have with FBA Flip?
Yep. We definitely, are seeking to be an industry leader. We see ourselves, we're in this for the long haul. We definitely see, just reality of this. I'm a big believer in the fact that e-commerce assets are probably some of the most sustainable digital asset investments that could be made now. When people look at crypto and people look at a lot of things like in the Web3 economy, I tell people you almost have to commensurately look at crypto investments like an S&P 500 investment. That has to be looked at over the long haul, because the reality of it is I think there's a lot of cloudiness comes into a lot of the tech space and just the ecosystem in general because of false expectations. When people are investing $1,000 into Ethereum and you think, by the end of the week, this is going to be 10,000. The fact you set a false expectation and almost ruins the entire, process of what you're doing. If you had expected, that maybe this Ethereum is going to appreciate over 3 to 5 years, then you probably would be a lot happy with the outcome because you set a realistic expectation. So I say that to say, we definitely, see e-commerce and selling online, as probably the most consistent and, how do I say this, growth opportunity that is unparalleled because of just the unprecedented traffic in selling goods online. There's always there's always more of a growth opportunity online that, with some traditional investments, you pretty much, there's a capacity. One of my favorite examples I tell people in real estate is, when you think of a development, you think, like 500,000 units, you think to yourself, that, okay, at capacity, I can have 500, I can have 1,000 tenants. But, when you're selling stuff online, you think of product diversification, you think about, new catalogs, you think, there's unlimited growth opportunities. So, when you look at an e-commerce investment, you can look at it, just from where it's at commensurately and if it maintained, but the growth opportunity, it's so much more. So us looking at it like that, we're really making a bet over the long haul, that what we're doing and what our structure is we're positioning ourselves just with the marketplace. We want to expand into, really offering and transition to being a digital asset portfolio management company where we really, start to offer people fractional ownership and investing into e-commerce assets, through our portfolio. That is really, the type of structure, that we're trying to create. But like I said, the marketplace is kind of the first domino to fall in that, because that in its own right has kind of, created a lot of enterprise structure and a lot of, strategic partnerships that we, really help increase the value of a portfolio like that, when it's time to do that. So like I said, us, just kind of looking into where things are at now and just kind of, betting on the future and just, the evolution of this space. We definitely, just see FBA Flip as, really want to be a national leader, just kind of in this space. Us being in Cleveland, it really, has even, it's really, driven us more, to want to do something nationally, because I feel so very often this stuff, Cleveland and a lot of our ecosystem, may not have the respect just in the national playing field, because we don't oftentimes, do things that are nationally useful. And I don't think we sometimes I think that sometimes we're a little bit behind and when we capture trends. Like, see, there's a first adoption benefit, and everybody knows that. You can't invest in something, like when it's appreciated, you got to buy on the dip, and everybody knows, that's just how you make money, and people, when you are bringing value, you can't bring value once it's established. You have to bring it when it's not there, because that's what makes it valuable. And just what we really, envision, this to be is really wanted to, have a real, like a large tech win, out of Cleveland and stuff, and really start to show people nationally and stuff. A lot of our concentrations in Brooklyn, in Miami, and, LA County and stuff, and really, being able to show, that there's a company or, there's a faction that is strategically involved and deeply involved in this space, and they're based out of Cleveland, and I live in Miami, or I live in New York, and I live in LA, but I deal with people in Cleveland all the time, and I think that will, start to increase, our brand as a city, and we start to do things, on that level.
Yeah, no, maybe let's pull on that Cleveland thread for a little bit, because I know you have a ton of thoughts on just kind of where we are, how we've evolved.
Yeah.
I'll maybe just leave the floor to you to kind of share some of the thoughts that you have and some of the perspective.
Yeah, and, I think a lot of people close to me know, like my the way I look at Cleveland is deep, but just to kind of, peel some to peel some of those layers back, I think that our city has all the infrastructure to be a national player. And I think that, that is the reason why sometimes I may be hard on it and stuff, because I think, when and someone like you and other people who are, just kind of involved and not even necessarily involved, but aware of, kind of just some other tech things that have happened just kind of in the Ohio ecosystem. You look to some place like Columbus, you look to someplace like Cincinnati, and you look and say, okay, look, Cleveland has 3 major sports teams. We have a lake, we have more of a city structure than some of these other, places in Ohio that are probably progressing at a faster rate. And you have to ask yourself, why, why is that happening? Even, kind of speaking, something with FBA Flip, there are 2 of these major buyers, in Ohio. There's a brand called Cincy Brands based in Cincinnati, and another brand called Society Brands. They're based out of Canton. And like I said, both of these guys have raised over $200 million, debt and equity in the last 6 months, literally exclusively just to buy Amazon businesses. When I look at stuff like this, and I just look at the ecosystem, and I look at, the concentration of these new and emerging sectors, in New York, and then I see it in Ohio, but not in Cleveland, in Cincinnati, or someplace else, it almost, speaks to sometimes our complacency in Cleveland. And I think, that is why it's so needed right now in our ecosystem for someone to kind of forge ahead and to show how much we're really missing out on. Secondly, how other people would view Cleveland if we were just to step to the plate, because I think oftentimes we get an unnecessarily negative reputation on a national scale, because sometimes I think, that we don't perform as well as we truthfully can when we're on the national playing field, and I think, that's something else, like just in our ecosystem internally, we have to, just be more cognizant of, that when we do have those national spotlights and stuff, you only have one time to make a first impression, and I think that oftentimes, when you have people come from New York, when you have people come from these larger cities and stuff, I think that the way that we present Cleveland could be a lot more commensurate, to a major city, because I think that there are major city elements in Cleveland, and I think, like if those things were pulled together and presented in a little bit more of a progressive way, I think the flavor of Cleveland would totally change.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Shared perspective. I think it's a good opportunity to maybe just bring up, consider Cle and some of the work thinking you've been doing around that. Maybe just start with what it is and your perspective there.
Yeah, for sure. So Consider Cleveland is my nonprofit. So just kind of just on my entrepreneurial journey, just, what I just do with tech for business and stuff, I just start to realize all the things that Cleveland was really void of, just in really building a legitimate tech ecosystem. When you look at, a lot of major cities and stuff, a lot of major cities are able to benefit from the flavor of other cities because they have more in and out traffic. People who live in New York, they're fortunate because they experience a lot of people who are not native New Yorkers, because there's a lot of people who come to New York frequently, and I think the way we really start to, re-engage ourselves into just a national playing field in Cleveland is, for one, really being able to not only leverage the assets and the resources that we have in Cleveland, but being more open and conducive to, doing things for people from out of town, because that is how a lot of progress is made in other cities. I don't think we look at these things, as intricately as we truthfully should. A lot of progress made in Silicon Valley and a lot of progress made in New York is not always by native New Yorkers and not by people who are from San Francisco. There are people who go and seek opportunity in places they few opportunity is there. And I think that if we start to more on a national level start to express the opportunity that lies here in Cleveland, I think that's one thing that people don't even understand, because people don't come to Cleveland, like they do some other cities. Cleveland and even, building FBA Flip, I have realized, the cost of doing business, I think especially in a startup phase and just really trying to be, just cognizant, of outflowing cash. I think that Cleveland is probably the best economic opportunity, for just a tech startup. I think that just how we were kind of earlier in our conversation, being connected on the internet and having, just the access to information that's kind of unprecedented, like in generations before, it almost eliminates the geographic constraints, because, you think to yourself, when you have LinkedIn and you have, all these different networks and stuff that, you can interact with people in New York, you can interact with people in Miami and stuff, you have all, Discords, these different DAOs and different things like that. It allows you to connect yourself in a way that you probably wouldn't have been able to in the past. So I almost have to look at our ecosystem from 2015 forward, because I think that, for example, I think people who probably left Cleveland in 2000 seeking opportunity, it was a lot more valid, because, I think that, we weren't at this stage in society where you get on LinkedIn and, you got a group chat of dudes in Manhattan right then. I don't think we were there, in 2004. So the Consider Cleveland is really, like, I don't know if I mentioned it, but to engage Cleveland on a national scene through tech and innovation. I really feel the only thing that can really revitalize us and really remove that Rust Belt stigma is really accepting and adopting a lot of these new and emerging digital concepts, and really trying to become a leader, in new things like just the development of the Web3 economy, eCommerce, different things like that. And kind of, like I said, leave a lot of our traditional baggage in the past that hasn't really worked out for Cleveland so much, since the post-manufacturing era, And I think that our city, probably unlike other cities, is the most primed and ready to turn the page, because we don't have a lot going on. Where I think, with some other cities, turning the page means closing the book on something else, when I don't think there's so much being written in the current chapter,
I love the way you put that. Honestly, I know, because we've done it before, but I could talk to you for hours about this stuff.
I know.
I'll be cognizant of time here, and we'll keep it in Cleveland, but I'll ask you the same closing question that we have everyone on the show talk about, which is not necessarily for your favorite thing in Cleveland, but for something that other folks may not know about. Hidden gem.
I mean, I really enjoy our cultural gardens. I mean, that's probably my favorite stroll on the east side. In Cleveland, like I said, keeping in Cleveland. I mean, should I go east side suburbs right now? I would say
you can go there. You can go there.
Okay, I'll step out a little bit. I mean, I would say my favorite place in Cleveland, like I said, just aesthetic, geographically, definitely Chagrin Falls. I definitely see, in a few years and stuff, definitely, I see that being a destination point. But for now, downtown and stuff is definitely where I feel like this is definitely the most progressive place to be in Cleveland. Right now it would be downtown Cleveland. I think that outside of Culture Gardens, Chagrin Falls, restaurant-wise, I'm thinking, I like Angelo's, I like Black Box and Legacy Village, stuff like that. I think people, when they come to Cleveland, actually realize like our food scene is probably on par with other cities. I'm happy to say that because I like to think of myself as a chef after 6.
That's awesome. Well, I'm really genuinely glad we finally got to have this conversation. I know it's been too long and in the making, but really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
No, likewise, Jeff. It's been great. This has definitely been months in the making, and next time we won't keep them waiting that long to get back on the pod.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. If folks have anything they would want to follow up with you about the breadth of topics we've covered here today, what would be the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, definitely like my LinkedIn and stuff. I will say, as time has went on and stuff, and it's funny, I think more people in tech don't use tech so much in their social life because that's all they do. I don't even really use my Instagram, my Twitter as much as I used to and stuff, just because of just what I do for work. I probably say like best way is my LinkedIn and stuff. I'm always on my LinkedIn and stuff. So just look me up on LinkedIn. I'll give you, I'll give you the link afterwards and stuff. But that's probably my best way to go.
All right. Well, thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it again, Jeff. Thanks again, man.
That's all for this week. Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show. So if you have any feedback, please send over an email to jeffrey@layoftheland.fm or find us on Twitter @podlayoftheland or @sternjefe, JEFE. If you or someone you know would make a good guest for our show, please reach out as well and let us know. And if you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes or on your preferred podcast player. Your support goes a long way to help us spread the word and continue to bring the Cleveland founders and builders we love having on the show. We'll be back here next week at the same time to map more of the land. The Lay of the Land podcast was developed in collaboration with The Up Company, LLC. At the time of this recording, unless otherwise indicated, we do not own equity or other financial interests in the company which appear on this show. All opinions expressed by podcast participants are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of any entity which employs us. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.